All right, I have a thumbs up, which means we are Facebook Live, and this is our work session for March the 1st in preparation for our meeting of March the 5th. So we have, as we try to do, we have a presentation. In this case, Chief Ballard is going to present us some of the information he has in support of, well, in providing information relative to the camera ordinance, and I'll say in support of because I think it is supportive of the camera requirements that we're putting in this potential ordinance for the next board meeting. So, and then we'll have the discussion of the agenda items. So, Chief, I will leave it to you if you would please go right ahead.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you to the Mayor, to the Vice Mayor, which hopefully is watching, and to board members. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity and platform. This is going to be a discussion. It's going to cover a little bit of the background as to how we got here and talking about the camera ordinance. We're going to talk about analytics, amplified effect. We're going to talk about a couple of cases that we're prepared to talk about publicly, and the importance and need of this ordinance. And so first of all, I think it's important in the discussions, we often hear different rumblings and different things. I can't express enough that as a chief of police, I'm very, very lucky to have people on my team that are qualified to know what they're doing, and they answer our calling continually. And some of the ones that helped put together this presentation, or if you have additional questions afterwards, anything dealing with technology, be Sergeant Lovelady. I've got Lieutenant Davis, who is over our investigative team, and will add a little bit of input of an event that took place on Christmas Eve. And then I've got Ms. Shannon Cunningham, who is a very well-qualified crime scene investigator, who just recently testified in a murder trial in next door in our neighboring Columbus, and the importance of how cameras come into play in addressing some of the crimes there. So we have a plethora of information, and how did we get to this point, I think is important to know. When I mentioned here about how great we are with the help of this board, you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you get out here and you get exposed to what other agencies and other trends are. And one of the important things about accreditation is it generates that you have to apply analytics in your operation. Every time you have to look at how you can do things better, how you can do things more cost effective, or you're addressing your true threats within your community. A great example of that would be our 9 p.m. routine. Many of the members of the board were here when we were experiencing just a tremendous amount of juvenile crime related to theft of guns from unlocked vehicles. And it's been something we've been very consistent about every night, 9 p.m. And it's my pleasure standing here. I don't want to jinx it, but we have seen a great reduction, by the way, in auto burglaries, right? We've had a less impact of stolen guns going into the hands of juveniles. And we did this through analytics. And analytics are how we drive. We are our own competitor. We do take ideas from other entities, but this is how we come to the camera ordinance. And the purpose of this was through these analytics, we found that time and time again where we're going in places that we thought we would have some type of technology, some type of support when a violent crime takes place, and time again we were finding that we didn't. And we were somewhat surprised, because you would think that a lot of entities that if they're dealing with the general public in a commercial balance there, that would be a given to have this technology to support it. Whether they did or didn't, we still have a tremendous responsibility to be able to deliver answers. Whether you're talking small crime, big crime, we'll talk about both here in this presentation. But that was at the heart of this was the purpose of this. It's not, we've dealt with and had very open discussions with concerns of how we intend to expand or what we intend to do. This is about commercial properties. This is about large commercial properties. And obviously, you as my boss, you understand that politics is ever evolving with the document and the final thing. But we're looking at, I think, one of the versions is about 10,000 square feet and 50 parking spots, which is a fairly large commercial entity. How we came about this is, and I'll mention Alderwoman Sistrunk and the mayor very often in this room with Lisa and Nav Ashford, we sit down, we have very strong conversations about the city budget, about trying to push how and why do we have crime, why is this overtime cost where it's at, where it's not. And this is important in analytics. So some of this, when we realize this is per detective, when we go to an aggravated assault, a violent crime, something along those lines there, we're working an average about 35 working hours of overtime to address the answers that need to be happening for that crime. When we have video evidence, it goes remarkably less. Now, between the last discussion and the last board meeting and now, we had an armed robbery to occur. Fortunately, we had a glimpse of the vehicle of the armed robbery. From the time the armed robbery occurred at 8 p.m. to midnight, our SWAT team was apprehending the suspect that made the bad decision to pull in a gun. We had video that played. We were fortunate to have the weapon. And we're going to go into why the vehicle is important so much as what the suspect looks like. Let me take it over to one important point I want everyone to understand is that the police department truly believes that a strong, effective public safety program, strong, effective police department, and economic development go hand in hand. We as a police department have to constantly be aware of our changing format and make sure that we're doing the right strategies that are out there. And if we do that, then we're creating a safer environment. One of our analytics that kind of comes back is, and it's something that Chad White's office has recently put out. We put out on social media. This is concerning the state of Mississippi removing Hinds County. Mississippi, if you don't believe it, and the sad, hard discussions are, it can be a violent state. When you watch the news tonight, tomorrow night, the night after, look at the violence that's going to be on there. 52 counties in the state of Mississippi have a higher homicide rate than the national average. Okay? So a lot of that, thank goodness this doesn't include Octibaha, but Octibaha is in the center with a lot of the surrounding entities that it does include. All right? And so when you have violence that's there, violence can be expensive, and it goes far beyond what the average citizen thinks. I'm not just talking about in overtime. I'm talking about from the victims, from the damage, from the injuries, from the manpowers, from the crime lab results. They get very expensive. That crime labs are required for your testimonies, for making sure you have the right individual. Then you cross it over to the justice system. And you talk about the importance of cameras and how it goes to a plea deal versus a full trial. Now, I mentioned earlier, Shanna Cunningham had just recently testified, and Shanna, you might be able to provide insight. What was the discussion that the camera could have led to? And it's public, it's a court, open court. What did the camera in the discussion come out with the murder trial?
So it's very common with violent crime scenes that I respond to work shooting scenes, which most commonly are probably going to have more than one shooter. So my goal is to collect as much evidence as I can to basically tell the story of what actually occurred objectively. But it's the defense's job to cast doubt in the minds of the juries. And so something that is commonly comes up as contention in trial is, well, who shot first? And so that is something that video evidence could answer that part of especially shooting scenes.
So the clarity of having a camera kind of ends that debate. It provides those answers that's very difficult. The prosecution is going to have to always deal with, and the defense is going to actively bring it up, especially one of the first questions when you're using video cameras, because they're about to go that route to plant the doubt. Don't let your eyes lie to you, right? And that's something we deal with. Now I want to bring it back on these two statistics here in the Starkville Police Department statistic. This is what you're kind of looking at per cost at a national average and how expensive crime is for our country. And then you take it down to a Mississippi average, and this is based on homicide. But internally, we did $262 on 67 felonies and overtime costs. Those costs did not include, ladies and gentlemen, the apprehension costs. It did not include the crime lab. It did not include time in court that's being distracted because now we're going to trial versus a plea deal versus an absolute case there. Okay, so when you talk about taking on the role or responsibility of protecting the taxpayer, it can't be underestimated that if you're operating a police department very much with some of the very similar business concepts of are we being as efficient as we possibly can, then this is a very driving factor of here when we have technology working for us or when we don't. So important to know. Last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, outside the board meeting, I was having a conversation with Alderman Beatty concerning amplified effect. And it's ironic that, unfortunately, for the University of Georgia in Athens is going through a very tough time now. And the reason why this is part of the presentation is two things. One, the mayor, when he came out in Athens talking about what they can do to better protect their citizens, he was very quick to talk about bringing on additional cameras and going to the amplified effect. He presented where the University of Georgia was in safety compared to other SEC communities. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, he's talking about us as well. And so the amplified effect, and Mr. Media, please get this one right. The local, when violent crime hits every community, it always impacts us locally, right? For some of these communities, it will have a regional impact. For a few of them, it will be a state impact. The city of Starkville is going to be an amplified impact. But what I mean is that all the young men and women that come here and the faculty that come here and call Starkville home for a few years, when they graduate and they leave, Starkville is forever going to be a home. So our reputation and when things happen go far beyond state lines. And the amplified effect is affecting all SEC communities and universities. Another thing I would like for the board to be very aware of is what's called the Jean Clary Act. Most of you are aware of this. This is a federal act that's based upon crime reporting. Why is it important? A little backdrop here. Jean Clary, she was a student that, very bright student, had endless amounts of scholarships, ended up choosing a university that was, unfortunately, many, many years ago, that was unreporting and hiding crime. It ended up costing her life. And a credit to her mother, she ended up getting the Jean Clary Act passed. And this is something that we became aware of, or I became aware of as chief of police when these reports kept coming through requesting specific crime on certain areas outside of campus. Yes, it impacts universities. It also impacts university communities. And what they do with this data is they ask specific stuff. I think with this one is BYU out of Idaho. You'll see where they ask for specific crimes and specific locations. Ladies and gentlemen, what they're doing with that is they're taking the data and they're trying to market their own communities whether they're safer for marketing very talented individuals. So again, amplified effect. The comparison sometimes that we have, which is natural and understandable, of what Columbus is doing, what Tupelo, what Vicksburg, what Meridian, what these other locations are doing is understandable. They are our competition. But what I'm trying to advocate for is it's also the amplified effect. What we're playing at a higher level where our competition is also a public safety competition with other university communities. And acts like the Jean Clary Act ensure that that information is out there. That transparency is critically important. And I can't declare enough, we are very transparent, but unfortunately you still have sometimes communities out there that are not as transparent as what they need to be in regards to crime. What I'm about to show here is a video of an impact. Now I need y'all to put on your investigative hats. All right, this is some of the fun stuff. This is a simple misdemeanor. This isn't normally assigned to a detective. This is going to be concerning graffiti. And graffiti that hit time and time again. And when you normally come up to graffiti, you think it's a kid spray painting. But when that juvenile is spray painting, public property, private property, after a while the costs start adding up. And you're hitting the image, you're frustrating people, And so you got detectives that are really designed for being able to find the investigative leads on this. So if I need to stop. All right, so this is a camera backside here. And of course, we're confident there's no identity here. This is just a general review of a case that's now been closed. A couple things I want you to know that the camera provided. One, that's a very busy night. It's post-game traffic, okay? Those cars are flying through that intersection, right? Our officers are working everywhere, right? It wasn't intimidating. Secondly, I want you to take a look at the number that when you look, if you were an investigator just looking at graffiti, of what you think you would be dealing with versus what you're dealing with. And it's sped up. You can see the cars. I know that your time is important.
A minivan?
Minivan, yes, sir. Minivan.
It's all they can
There are
get
not
that
a lot
night.
of
Mom
college
and Dad
students
would
that
look.
rock a minivan, are there, right? We don't see that often. But there are younger students that rock minivans. That was very telling. And listen, this camera wasn't sick. This camera didn't have the flu. This camera wasn't tired, not paying attention. This camera was doing its job, happened to be in the right position. This camera just told us it wasn't a graffiti artist. It was multiple ones. They're close, and they're active, and they're hanging out, and they're driving a Minuteman. That's how you get conclusion to a case and be able to stop property damage, private and public property there through having camera systems set up. All right? We took it to misdemeanor. I want to take a little bit to what I call ghost. Armed robbery suspects, they love dressing like ghosts. And when you watch the news tonight, tomorrow night, next week, there's going to be an armed robbery. That individual will probably be dressed like a ghost. I hope that individual isn't in Starkville armed robbery. Let me clarify that. But when you watch the news, they were preparing to go against the camera. That's why they dress like they do, to avoid the camera, to avoid to allow defense attorneys, as Investigator Cunningham advised, to be able to provide doubt that it was their client that was committing the robbery. We can always try to go for prints, get foot impressions, and I won't get too deep into the weeds, but when you do a robbery, this is where stores time and time again set up. But what we've learned through our own analytics, we don't go after the robber. We go after the robber's vehicle. This is why the importance of parking lots cannot be understated. The other night I mentioned 4 hours. It was the vehicle. It was distinct markings on it that led us to conclusion of that. It is the vehicle. You're never going to identify the ghost, but you're going to get the ghost vehicle. You're going to understand that you've got rust here, you've got a cover there, you've got mud flaps, you've got very distinctive features. So when you talk about 2 megapixels as being a minimal technology requirement, that vehicle is all we need. The timing in, because it's going to step into one of our other systems that the city has invested into. And then from there, we're going to identify the vehicle. We get the vehicle, we'll get the ghost. And ladies and gentlemen, if the ghost doesn't want to park in the parking lot, and the ghost wants to run a quarter mile or half mile to the vehicle, we will catch the ghost. But that is one of the things that's plaguing when you see violence and armed robbery up over and over and over, is because our systems aren't responding to say, hey, don't focus on the person that's intentionally avoiding the camera. Focus on what the person can't hide, that's trying to get away, and that's the chariot, the vehicle. And that's why I can't stress enough the importance of parking lots can't be underestimated here in how it's going to solve crime. This next one involved this weapon, and this is an AR-15. And I'll bring y'all back a little bit. I don't know what y'all were doing for Christmas Eve, around lunchtime, Christmas Eve. I was having to make a very difficult call to the mayor. And the reason why I was making a difficult call is because Lieutenant Davis and, come on, Lieutenant. Lieutenant Davis and his crew and Patrol Division have reported we had an event to take place in Hibbett's parking lot. And what had occurred is some individuals that did not like another individual saw him in the store, and they made a decision that they were going to shoot him. He came out of the store. He was with his mother and sister. And in the investigation, the only reason why he didn't pull the trigger is because he didn't want to have to shoot the mother or sister. This is Christmas Eve, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the parking lot. Now, with that and some of the events that take place there, Tyler, I'll turn it over to you to talk about investigatively what we had and what we didn't have, and what would have helped with as far as the camera goes.
Right, so, on this particular incident, the only evidence we had was the cashier camera, which is only there for fraud. If you do a bad check or do something, they go back and pull it. So we had to go in the system, contact the manager, and it took us about 72 hours to solve this case. Had we had one camera in that parking lot, it would have taken us 30 minutes, right? So when they come out in the parking lot, none of this interaction happens inside. We don't see bad guy at all because he never goes in. So he's sitting probably in this area here, and mom and victim are parked over here. So he pulls out his weapon in the middle of the crowded area and starts pointing and talking at him. But all we had is statements, right? We had a young male who was like, hey, I'm gonna handle this myself. I don't need to get the police. And a mom who was like, no, you got to tell the police the truth. So we're battling those things. But the biggest thing to take away from it, we didn't have that evidence. Had a shots fired taken place or an armed robbery taken place or any type of victim had taken place, we would have been lost on this case. It would have taken an amplified effect to try to get there. So had we had those capabilities, we would have been able to solve it. Not to mention when you go to trial, what's true and what's not. Right now we had a he said, she said case. No vehicle, so even when we found where we thought the kids lived, we didn't know what cars they were in, right? So we couldn't write constructive warrants. We had to do a lot of more dangerous operations, I would say, and it took 72 hours during Christmas of my investigators working when one simple camera, even gray and white, would have gave us what we needed to solve that case in a more productive time manner. And we're lucky that it wasn't anything major other than him just pointing and stopping right there.
Thank you, Tyler. And we'll bring this up, I think it's important to note, this business area has been in business for almost 20 years. When are they going to put the exterior cameras out? This is a generator. When we have people coming from softball tournaments and other things, they're going to come here, they're going to shop. We need the sales tax and we need to keep it safe. But we also need to do our part in trying to protect and be able to have an economic and public safety approach at the same time. And simple investment in technology will get us there. This was a long Christmas because we did not know if that event was going to sprawl out Christmas Eve night. And I can't say it enough. I said it to begin and I'll say it again. For the men and women that serve this department, I'm blessed as the chief of police, because the sacrifices they make is just unbelievable. And they do an amazing, amazing job in bringing safety to where y'all were able to enjoy shopping in Christmas without any fear there. So we did a little bit of kind of internal estimate based on the current structure where we're at. We've got at least 50 properties that will be impacted by this ordinance. Currently 44 already 1 foot in the door with some type of camera system, okay? And 6 with no visible cameras. This was just a general, it's probably, it might be 1 or 2 off, but we're getting really close, and I can't stress that enough because we're trying to get the data so y'all are armed with accurate information, all right? And Brandon? Okay, here we go. All right, and this is another numbers in our analytics that I think is pretty important. When you talk about parking lot events, when you talk about things that take place, we went back 2 years and 1 month. We had 49 events. Some of these were misdemeanors. Many of them were misdemeanors, public drunk. Some of them were kind of a little bit more heavier misdemeanors, like a stalking, okay? We don't got love members. We don't want someone to be stalked, but it doesn't necessarily hit a felony. But I focused here on the felony component because you got 4141. You had 4 armed robberies in 2 years. You had 1 kidnapping. You had 4 aggravated assaults. You had 1 bomb threat. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in times, challenging times, and the reason why these numbers are here, it's not a matter of need. These are answers that we have to be able to find through the advantages of technology. The need is there. It's going to be about whether or not we're going to be able to set a business standard to be able to protect our citizens, because, again, I do think that, obviously, given the trajectory, we're going to have crime, and the members of the media are very, very good at approaching things. And I would say they're probably going to ask one or two questions here in closing. You're either going to come to me as the chief of police and you're going to say, would an ordinance have helped in this investigation? Or they're going to ask, did the ordinance help in this investigation? And I would say that I'm hopeful that the later is going to be the question. And I believe, based off the experiences that we have, that through embracing technology in some of these locations, that we will have success. And this will be a very important toolbox for our police department to have when it comes to solving these crimes. This concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any kind of questions with me or my staff. So.
Okay. Anybody got any questions of the chief? Yes, sir.
The incident by Hibbett's, Kroger has cameras?
They do?
Lowe's have cameras?
They do.
Okay, so is there one specific developer that would be responsible for that, or who would be responsible for putting those cameras up in that instance? Because I'm trying to figure out.
Property owner.
Okay, so who is that property?
RMR is one of them. I don't know how that's divided up, but that's just going to be on the tax records as to who owns which property and who owns which property. But I think you've got two owners there. I know RMR is one of them, unless they've sold it recently. But it's intended for the property owner or the landowner developer, as opposed to the individual business entity.
Okay.
And to add to that, Alderman Webb, I think also that we will do, if this ordinance, if y'all see fit for it to pass, we'll do everything that we can to do part of our community outreach to educate the importance of camera positioning. Granted, you and I discussed earlier, there are some of us that just are challenging technology. I'm one of those, right? And to be able to have the camera, to be in a good position, to be able to to deal with lighting issues, things of that nature, we would make that part of our outreach to go and work with private entities to make sure that it's there. And I think that Kroger was very, very limited in what they have in that parking lot, and the same with Lowe's. And I think, again, a lot of these businesses go in with the template of employee theft and inventory concerns. And that's fine and good, but there's a very real threat within our community of when violence takes place. Oftentimes it's in these parking lots, and those cameras are failing to be able to capture it.
I have a follow-up question.
No.
So if getting these cameras is a cost issue as well as a safety issue, I mean, if it saves you overtime hours and all that, why would the city not want to participate in helping to pay for that? I realize it's private property, but I think there are some exceptions for public safety concerns. So I just throw that out as a question. If it's that important to us and we could save money, why wouldn't we want to step up and make it easier for the businesses to say, we'll participate in this with you as a partnership?
Well, I think that one of the top arguments on data is transparency. And I think it's very important. People are concerned about the city. You know, one of the arguments is overreach already. Who has the data? What are they doing with it? We don't want your data. We don't, and we want you to have your data unless there's a major crime. So when it comes to the management of the transparency of data, I think that can't be lost in the discussion. Because if the city is going and putting it out there, and again, this is obviously a decision for you all to work out among yourselves and whatever you finally do, I would say that the headache that comes with all the questions that are continually there about why are they watching us, what are they doing, that is a very real discussion of transparency of data. I think it's a far lesser leap to be able to say, your camera, your data. We don't want it, we don't want to manage it, but if something happens that we need it, then we'll go through a judicial review to access it.
Okay, what would be wrong with giving them that option? Say you can pay for it all yourself, or we will help participate, but in exchange, this is our expectation of what we get in terms of access, and then we could control how much access we have if they want us to participate.
I think that is definitely a discussion between you and your fellow board members on that final conclusion. I just know as a department head of chief of police, that it is a great technology that seems to be very cost effective that we need for multiple reasons.
Do we have the ability, if we do what Alderman Ruff is suggesting, and help pay for these installed, we have the ability to monitor, I mean, we have the ability to put the tape or the data or whatever it would be stored on in a place where we could, I guess if we own them and place them at those sites or something, we could retrieve it and have access to it at our discretion.
That would be something that I would, definitely, I would think that a review with IT, because again, when you talk about data, we're already kind of, for an example, we do about at least 10,000 videos in 1 week in the police department. Every officer, every car, we're rolling a lot of data, okay? So that storage of data can get expensive. So to answer that, I'm getting outside of my level of expertise, and I want you to be armed with nothing but facts. So I would refer that to Joel and to Brandon working together upon, when we're talking about this number of properties, talking about this number of cameras, or what kind of data costs that would be and our ability to manage it.
I don't think we want to get in that business. I mean, I really think that if we have access to all of this, that no telling who and what's going to start coming and asking us for information. We'd be covered up with FOIA requests more than likely. I really think we ought to let the property owners manage it unless we need it. We may not ever need it, but we may. And when we do, we're going to wish you had it. It's like fire insurance. You know, you don't really want to spend that money, but when you need it, you need it. I just don't think we want to get up in the middle of that, and I'm not even sure that from a legal standpoint we're in a position to do that, because we are not allowed to do things on private property that benefit private individuals separately.
Yeah, I'm not certain either way. I know the general, the ones that we looked at with these ordinances, it's been the private people putting them in, and then we have opportunity to use them if we need them by way of a subpoena or whatever.
Yeah, and then you go through the court
And we
system
stay
to
out
make
of
that
it.
happen.
And let me say, I think the cameras are important, but I think the discussion about our role in that is also worth having as well.
Absolutely.
Sure, and I'm sorry, I was going to say, one of the things that I thought was in your packet, but it's not. I put in the original draft where we made the changes and highlighted in yellow. That should have been in the packet to show the previous one and then the final draft. So we need to get that done because it shows where we've tweaked it based on comments that we've gotten from the public. And so I wanted the board to have both of those options so they'd be able to see that. This is the final draft
All
that
right,
you've
so
got in
that
your packet.
tweaking, does that change who the folks are that have to?
Well, it's reduced the number significantly
So
because we've
who's it
gone
cut
to.
out?
Well, I don't know exactly, but the chief's people went through and given the parameters of 10,000 square feet and 50 spaces, it cut out a number because one, it was before it was either or. Now it's and, so that cuts out significant, almost 50 different locations based on
I
the
think we're
previous.
at 120 by the changes
Yeah.
recommended, it dropped down to 50.
Yeah. So we took out the entire Main Street area because they don't have public, I mean, they don't have their own parking space. And they were exempted, but we don't have to exempt them anymore. So everybody's in the Main Street now. So there are any number of other entities that have been dropped out because they're not part of that deal. But we also put back in, if you will, the Main Street folks that have been exempted out, so.
Okay. And a very good presentation. I appreciate it very much.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions of the chief? I'm sorry, you had
No,
one.
no. You said there's 50 businesses, 44 of those have some kind of, so we're talking about 6 that would literally be completely out of pocket. That's 6 for the greater good of the whole town. It's making a sacrifice for it. I feel like, do y'all not agree with that? 6 businesses overall impacted out of shopping centers that don't have anything.
Any kind of camera.
So you don't know that they do
We
or
don't
not.
know if they do or don't.
Probably they do.
How close are the 44 to being
We
in
know that they have
compliance?
an operating camera system,
Uh.
so, I mean, that's the bar that we're
Will
sitting
they
there.
comply, those 44 comply right now?
44
Is
have
our
1
ordinance?
foot in the door, meaning they don't necessarily have exterior parking lot, but we know at minimum they've got operating cameras on their property.
And we also changed the ordinance to read if you've got interior cameras, you don't have to have cameras sitting at your front door, so you've already got interiors, just so that we can get an interior activity, and then you've got the parking lot. So that's also another tweak, another reason to have that available to everybody to see. So, Alderman Sistrunk.
And what I'd like to be sure Tuesday night, if we're going to continue a discussion about providing cameras for businesses, is I would ask the mayor and Burke and Lisa Harden to do some research to see if that is in fact something we can do. My knee-jerk reaction is much like the mayor's, that it's a private benefit. We don't really have access to private property, so I'd like to have some research.
Well, not only
and get
that, but that
clarified.
opens us up to who you're providing
Yeah,
it
you're
to.
picking winners
Yeah.
and losers.
Right, I weigh in with that, because we can't go on people's private property and fix anything, so why should we be able to?
I think you can carve out exceptions for public safety, but I'm not saying that we do that. Look,
Right.
I've spoken on this more than I intended to, and I think it's a great idea. I'm bothered by, the libertarian in me hates to force them to do it.
Alderman Sistrunk, your question is about cost sharing, the helping with.
Whether
what
we
that
can
puts us
legally,
into.
whether we can legally do that.
But I
And
do,
legally access private property
I do know
to do installation.
that the American Recovery Act had one of those things it stated in that stuff, the money from Congress was assistance, this was during the pandemic, was assistance to small businesses. And it was probably assistance to small businesses that were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But a lot of the ARPA money is being used in ways that, that probably are not, maybe word for word interpretation of that, but are being used for that. We would be using that for small businesses. I suspect it's probably would be an acceptable use of that money. I don't know. And the mayor mentioned last time that whatever we take out of the ARPA fund is we lose a match on the state side for water and sewer infrastructure. We were about to use a lot of that money for something else.
But we
And
didn't when they
we
told us we
did
could
not,
match it.
because we got our hands slapped. We were about to do it. And I guess what I'm saying is this would be a fund set up to assist small businesses to be able to put those cameras in. I like Alderman Rupp's idea on that. Camera fund. And if we're down to 6 businesses that have to have them now, and maybe a few of the 44 that would have to put some more into compliance, we're probably not looking at a large amount of money. And we do assist businesses in other ways. And so, and they're legal ways, but we do provide assistance to businesses in Starkville in other ways. So, that's not a bad idea. And I wonder if we could find out what all it would entail, and kind of just a real raw number about what it would cost to provide cameras for the 6 that are not in compliance, that don't have cameras now, the 6 businesses that fall in this category, and then maybe enough additional money to put the cameras in the rest of them to where they comply. They would bring them up to compliance and just see what it would be. Is anything wrong? Alderman Rupp, do you have any?
No, I honestly, I told the chief this earlier, that to me this is not a black and white issue. To me it's gray because of the libertarian part thinking that there is a city benefit to this. We talk about it being on private property. There's a huge community benefit, which was part of the explanation. I'd like to see the cameras in there. I just wanted to raise the question of the payment, but I think it's going to move forward. I'm not for delaying it, so I think Tuesday night we can.
Would you like to see you mentioned that you'd like to see what it would cost to be able to go in?
Where are we going to pull the funds? And you're talking about ARPA, and that's a non-starter. It's a non-starter. We've already dedicated them. Yes, Alderman Monk.
Great presentation. It broadened my education about why, because I was really concerned, but it gave me great knowledge of what we need to do. But we keep on wanting to spend taxpayer dollars to do something else with when we can't go on taxpayer property and fix something they need fixing. I got a lot of stuff right now need to be fixed, but we can't go on their property and fix it. So, we're going to get ourselves in trouble if we go to mess with taxpayer dollars to do something like that. And then you say all the stores already got indoor cameras in?
Well, there are a number of them that do. I know that certainly those that sell alcohol and that sort of thing, I've seen in the convenience stores, you see indoor cameras in those. I don't know, the chief is gonna have a more wider knowledge of who does and who doesn't. I don't.
Most stores I go in, they got just about got cameras in.
Inside, yeah.
Inside, they got
Yeah,
cameras
it's
on the
just-
inside.
It's mostly the parking lots that I think that
And
we're.
a lot of them got some on the parking, so on the parking lots
Some
too.
do, sure,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And if I may, let's not be short-sighted and say we can use ARPA and buy 6 cameras and that's it, dot period for all time. We may find a time, not this board or even the next board, but we may find a time when we want to expand this to other businesses. And we've just now set a precedent for the city providing those services. So think long-term strategically, not just strategically, but long-term about that. And I'm not sure that ARPA allowable uses trump state purchasing rules, so.
My last statement on this is, I'm not actually trying to change anyone's mind on this. I just felt this was the way I'm seeing this, and just wanted to share that. So I'm not stomping my feet and lobbying for you all to see it my way. I just think it was a point I wanted to make.
Okay, all right. Alderman Beatty, did you have something else?
I think, I certainly see the safety aspect of it, and I appreciate the chief's presentation and everything. And I just, if there was a way that we could assist, I know, you look and you say, well, that's public money going into a private business, and why should we do it? We do that. We do it in other ways. And we do it and consistently, and we've created, even a pattern of where we're putting public money in private businesses. And so, this is not something, completely would be out of character for the city of Starkville, because we do public money in private businesses in other ways.
When you say that, I assume you're talking about TIFs and tax abatements? Because I don't know of any other way we're doing that, right? Okay, all right, just be clear.
And those are both very much covered and allowable by state law.
Yes,
so.
they are, so.
Okay,
All right,
I
thank you.
just wanted to bring it up, and I agree that I would like to see if there was some way to add some assistance to small businesses that maybe going to be strained doing this, for us to be able to do it. May not be.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we can go through our agenda here. We have set of minutes. Ms. Harden, you're good with those? Mr. Huskisson, you're good with those?
Yes.
Could we consent on those? All right, as of now, I don't think we have any introduction, so I have nothing relative to mayor's comments, so it would just be whatever we feel compelled to say at the time. Yes,
There
ma'am.
will be a Boy Scout troop with us
Yes,
Tuesday night.
yes.
And if you've not talked to their troop leader, he would like to chat with you so you can acknowledge them.
I did have I think a text that gave me that, so I'll have to remember to do that. In fact, why don't we go ahead and put that on there, Lisa? I'm not sure what troop it is, but I'll see if I can search my text and we'll have a record of it. And then public hearing, so this is the third public hearing on what we just discussed, which is the third public hearing consideration of the adoption of the security camera ordinance. And again, Lisa, if you would get that.
Troop 14.
Troop 14, okay.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I ask one question while
Yes,
you're
sir.
there. Chief, what you think about it? What's your idea? What's your whole input about it? About these cameras? You don't want to run the city. You and your guys running the city. So what's your think on it?
And here I was thinking that we were.
I'm trying to save the part. I'm talking about the safety part.
I'm teasing you. Go ahead, Chief.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think it's important to know, and I can't stress this enough every time we give the tour, that a vibrant, strong economy is based off of really effective law enforcement policy. And we see it as a need, and I think that this ordinance is forward-thinking, forward-leaning, and will be very effective in our ability to combat law nature.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Chief, in the presentation, in the 4-1-4-1, was that, those instances took place in shopping center, commercial parking, retail parking lots?
They took place in areas that would be impacted by this ordinance, whether they had video. Some of these locations already had video, some of the locations did not have video. but they all were categorized. This wasn't like apartment complexes or churches. Or
It's all commercial.
all commercial that would be applied to Fund 3. There were far more events to take place, but these were events that were only applicable to what this ordinance would be about.
Is this, I assume we're gonna vote on this Tuesday night?
Well, it's set for a vote. If the board wishes to do otherwise, the board certainly can do
Well, I
otherwise,
just,
but it's
if
set
it's
for
a
a
third
vote.
public hearing, I'd say
Yes,
that.
third and
So
consideration.
we're gonna
Yeah.
vote on it.
Yeah, it's third public hearing with consideration. Okay, and then we have the Ruth Road properties coming back, and at the Vice Mayor's request, we're going to have 2 public hearings on this again, just because of the nature of the code enforcement elements to it. So we've got our first public hearing on the 201 Ruth Road, then 245 Ruth Road, 305 Ruth Road, and then 325 Ruth Road. So those are no action, but they are public hearings. So. All right, and the mayor has absolutely no business, which is all fine. Board business, we have consideration of the appointment to Starkville-Oktibbeha County Board of Trustees. Dr. Prince has asked to be reappointed. And so her letter, her email, I'm sorry, should be in the packet. Is that correct, Ms. Harden? Okay, so she is the, much like Mr. Davis, Sumner Davis had requested to be reappointed, and we reappointed him.
Sole applicant.
I'm sorry?
She's the sole applicant.
Yes, sole applicant, yes. So.
Consent.
Consent, okay. Consideration of approval of the Starkville tax abatement resolution for 44 properties. So that obviously is, I don't think, going to go on consent. We'll have a roll call vote for that one. But I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
But Alderman Sistrunk has tweaked the resolution. I think she had some input from.
I talked to,
Thank you. Go ahead.
I talked to Jen Gregory at Retail Strategies about recruiting businesses to Starkville, retail businesses to Starkville. And if you think back, the bigger retail businesses that have come to Starkville in the last few years have typically come with some sort of assistance and with a TIF. In this case, we're looking at a tax abatement, which is much less painful to the city from a financial perspective. But what Jen was telling me was that when you were recruiting large-scale retail businesses, that if you've noticed when you go from town to town, you'll see clusters of the same kinds of businesses, much like in the Triangle Crossing Shopping Center. You've got Marshall's, PetSmart, Aldi's, you'll Ulta Beauty. You'll see those same businesses clustering with each other. So they're looking for a synergy. They want to be with other businesses that are pulling people into that same area. We don't have that kind of space available currently in the city of Starkville. There's some spaces that could potentially be rehabbed, but at this point, the only person who's stepped forward and done that kind of rehabilitation is 44 properties. It is a standalone, essentially, for national recruitment. It is almost a standalone building, and so it makes it difficult to recruit to. She also ran some data for us about leakage areas, because we talked about is there a need for this or is there a need for that in the city of Starkville? And Joel, could you put that spreadsheet up on the board? If you look at the spreadsheet, if you can scroll up to the very top, this looks at the city of Starkville and then broadens it up to as much as a 10-mile radius. And consumer demands is, and 2023 is too close to have developed data just yet for there. But consumer demand are dollars that were spent in a brick and mortar store, not an internet store, but a brick and mortar store somewhere. 2021 market supply was what was available here in the city, and you'll see that we have opportunity gaps in lots of areas. Automobiles, we knew that we had opportunity gaps in automobiles. We have two dealers here in town. If you look down at home furnishings, furniture stores and home furnishings, and these are pulled based on a code that people assign to things, and the codes are not always as precise as you want to do. So I would look at that total line and not the individual lines, but the total furniture and home furnishing stores consumer demand within a 10-mile radius was a little over $14 million. just under 4 million of that was actually spent in the Starkville area. So there's about a $10 million leakage. People are buying things, but they're not buying them in Starkville, and those sales taxes are going somewhere else. She did a custom report for us that I don't have a copy of that we can share. But I don't have it in a format that I can pop it up there for you today. That broadened that area to a little larger area, reaching out maybe within a 45-minute driving distance, and the leakage in that area goes up to $40 million. So it's definitely an underutilized, an underserved retail demand here in the city of Starkville. So we talked about that. I did want to point out that it's difficult for us to know what this property will go on the tax rolls for, because they won't go on the rolls at cost. The Triangle Crossing Shopping Center went on the tax rolls at somewhere between 60% and 70% of cost. So, so the incremental taxes, which I think some people would like us to look at, is not going to be as much as the existing taxes. I've used a 75% threshold. I don't think it will come close to that. I think it will. I think it will be more in the incremental taxes are likely to be more in the 60% than 75% in terms of the additional taxes that come from there. So, but there are two major sources when we're talking about our budget. One is property taxes, but the other is sales taxes. And when we have to grow our budget, ideally we do it with sales taxes and let people that are coming into town to shop help with those with growing our budget. When we have budget discussions, and I know Alderman Beatty has pointed to some of the lively discussions we've had about budgets over the last few years, we tend to be looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover PERS, to cover police increases, that sort of thing. The tax abatement that we're looking at for to talk about Tuesday night will be about 1/10 of $1 million. It's probably going to be in that 30,000 range, which is not going to move the needle in our budget discussions. It's simply not, and it brings a lot to the city. Again, it's a difficult. Jennifer confirmed that it is a difficult recruitment area for the city. That there is an underserved demand in the city, and I just wanted to share that with you. I'd also like to say that the tenant that they're looking at is not a national tenant, it's a state tenant, and I think the reason that we have interest from them is because they do have an interest in this area, and it might be difficult to get somebody, a national chain or somebody who is not as committed to the city of Starkville as this particular tenant would be.
Yeah, they're particularly committed to Mississippi State. They are a big
That's
Mississippi
right.
State.
We get to come along for the ride.
We do, we do. And part of it is because apparently they have trucks coming up here regularly, so they obviously took their data.
Of that 10 billion.
Yeah, and said, you know, we're coming to Starkville every week or so. But anyway.
But if there's an opportunity gap for furniture in Starkville,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a furniture store with ties to Mississippi State and a very wealthy family, why are we giving them the break when the opportunity is there?
That's a good question.
Well, why did we give a corporate entity who also has a very positive bottom line of the larger tax break with knowing very little about what we were voting on? And I get that we are creating some manufacturing jobs, and it's difficult to recruit manufacturing to this city. But we did that, and we voted unanimously on consent.
We did that because the Golden Triangle Economic Development Authority Executive Director came to our meeting and asked us to do that. And that is standard procedure.
So there you go. If Joe Max comes and asks for this particular tax abatement,
in all of my years on a public board, with municipal government, when MDA or the local EDA came to you and they had an industrial prospect, stuff like that, and they had a code name for it, it was to be confidential, something like that, and that's that, we absolutely did that. We didn't do it for retail business, but I wasn't in the tip.
And this, again, this is a small project squeeze that we're talking about, was a $9.5 million investment with an average of $33,000 in tax abatement. That is not a make or break number for an existing business. It's not somebody new coming here, for an existing business here in town. Had we turned them down, would they have taken that $9.5 million and gone somewhere else? I don't know, but I don't know that they would not have either.
Yeah, I don't see it as apples and apples, and we talked about this. I think that industrial recruitment has been a weak spot for Starkville and very strong in the Golden Triangle in Columbus. I am more likely to give those breaks to try to build up the industrial base, because I think you need that diversification in your business portfolio in the community. In this case, we have the Taylor family of Ace Hardware, who's already signed a lease, another very great citizen of Mississippi, but very wealthy. You've got Oswald, and you've got the Dollar Store is already signed on. So I'd be willing to give them something to say thank you for coming, but I just couldn't support giving it all, because it's a case-by-case basis. And the next case is going to come in and say, you had 3 very wealthy players in this thing come in and you gave them all you could possibly give them. I don't think that's a good precedent. That's just me.
Well, I think you do look at each case on a case-by-case basis, and I think a $30,000 abatement is very different from a $300,000 abatement. And I think a sales tax generating abatement is different to one that will not generate any sales tax. And so this is even with the abatement, this is a net positive financial impact to the city. And I think that's just something each of us has to wrap our heads around. And I think that the question of whether an incremental tax, because I think you're okay with an incremental tax abatement. If a fourth of a sandwich is sufficient or not, you've got to make a decision, or if it will take a whole sandwich.
But isn't, Ms. Kelly, what's the lease going to be? How many years?
I don't know.
5?
My
Dude, I
understanding would
think
be 5.
we had asked for that information. I don't think
It's
information's been provided to us.
5 years, and if they hit
I
their
think
mark,
they're not
that.
so- But, you know, I think, with all due respect, if you read your ordinance and the items that they have you take into consideration, that's not one of them, nor is whether or not somebody's gonna make a profit. It's about renovating decrepit buildings in highly dense business areas and corridors, and encouraging people to come in and refurbish those rather than let them rot and build something out on Stark Road or and put in a strip mall somewhere. It's about rehabilitating and keeping our downtown and the business corridor busy and vibrant. So this tax thing is not to give rich retail people a break, it's to encourage developers and investors to rehabilitate existing buildings. And there's nothing in here about what the rent is. It's kind of interesting, or what type of business comes in. If you read through it, you have to go through all those things. And the one thing that this does bring is a lot of retail and inventory taxes to the city, and this encourages, hopefully, other people to maybe buy other buildings and redo them and fix them up and get some good businesses in here.
Well, and this is not a TIF, this is just strictly a tax
But-
abatement. We gave a TIF to Middleton
But is it-
Marketplace that did the same thing.
It's still, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Middleton Marketplace, a number of years ago, we did a TIF which included sales tax as well as the tax ad valorem taxes. So, we have done that in the past with that concept of having those renovations for areas that are dilapidated and in need of growth. Mr. Beatty.
But this is an investment by the taxpayers of the city of Starkville in that strip zone. The tax abatement is money that we would have captured, that we will not capture. And so to say that it's not proper for us to ask for financials, to look to see what the leases are, how much income it produced, what the expenses are, and what the cash flow is, that's reasonable. That's reasonable for something that the city of Starkville is potentially, we're going to ask our taxpayers to pay, to contribute to buying a tax abatement for the next 10 years. That's not unreasonable. I mean, and it does, the statement was made, or I'd urge that, well, why did we do the industrial thing, you know, as a city board in the tax abatement, tax incentive, tax giveaway, tax, whatever you're gonna call it, TIF business, as a board, we have the right to ask what we want to ask. And we haven't maybe some asking these questions here before. And I'll say something else about the TIFs and the continuation of TIFs and Starkville. Number one, developers build that into their business model. And I don't think they don't. They do. They know that we do the TIFs, and they build that in the business model. Walmart Neighborhood Market had built one in. The developer, who it was going to build that building and sell. I don't know who owns it. Walmart owns it. If a third party owns it, leases to Walmart. But they asked for one, and it came this close. But the city board turned it down, and within 30 to 60 days, they got a building permit, built a store, is doing a land office kind of business down there, just covered up. And the city of Stark was capturing all property and sales tax on that business. We also, and there's the figures are up here. The grocery thing is just reversed in the capacity to provide groceries and you can go out 10 miles and look to see. We're capturing that grocery market, and there's excess capacity. There's excess capacity here because we dropped a fourth grocery store into our market that was where everybody was paying tax and all the groceries that were being sold and stuff we were capturing sales tax on and property tax on, and we dropped a fourth grocery store all into that in the form of tax abatements, or not tax abatements, but TIFs on a shopping center. And now, this year sometime, probably we're going to get the call to have to issue the TIF bonds, and we're going to take $400,000 worth of our revenue, which would have been in sales tax and property tax on that property, and we're going to service debt on TIF bonds issued to lower the debt on that shopping center by us in the county, $8.3 million for the next 15 years. And I guess what I'm saying is when budget, and I say I'm like a broken record, when budget time comes up this summer, we're going to be grappling for money. And who's to say what the triangle would have been built had the TIF not been available? We do know the Walmart was built when the city said no. The Walmart Neighborhood Market got built. So I think we're in a situation where we keep the words out, and when now business comes start, well, that's the first thing they're going to do. And we are. Somebody made a statement a while ago of picking winners and losers and picking and choosing. That's what we're doing right now, because some places won't get these, some of them won't ask, and but we picking who we give tax incentives to, and we need the revenue. We need revenue when budget times. We've got a fire station, our 5th fire station, that our fire protection class rating, our class 3 rating is going to depend on pretty quick. Like I asked Chief over there, he told me that the Mississippi State Rating Bureau is going to come in here within time, and they're going to say, why have y'all not staffed and open station number 5 back up? And we better have, and I don't care what kind of answer we have. We could be in danger of losing our fire insurance rating. I know the people at this table do not think that's important. It is very important. But I guess what I'm saying is, to staff station number 5, we have to have money to operate on. The budget, the money that comes to fund the police and the fire department comes out of our general revenue, general operating budget, which comes primarily, the money comes from ad valorem tax and sales tax. And that's where, when we concede those monies, we are giving up money that goes into the pot to help pay for the police, for Chief Ballard's department, Chief Yarber's department, for the street department, the engineering department. Those all come out of general fund. And so that's the reason I think we need to be tread very carefully as we concede tax money through tax abatements and through tax increment financing and stuff. And I'm like Alvin Rupp. There may be some concession in some ground where I would could support it, but I don't think what's on the what's suggested on this resolution. By the way, how was the resolution written up? I mean, who decided what that resolution?
I wrote the resolution that's in your packet, and it is a listing of findings. You've got your packets there, listing of findings, and then a listing of things that we expect to have happen as a result of our approval. I would say, let's not be distracted by TIFs and manufacturing jobs and that sort of thing. But the purpose of this ordinance was to help revitalize, to make improvements, to bring more businesses into town, to help our retail base grow, because I think we'd all rather collect sales taxes than pay property taxes. I don't think there's anybody at this table that would prefer to collect property taxes as opposed to sales taxes. And if you take a look at the property, if you go by the Old Vowels property, there have been tremendous public-facing improvements that have been made. The parking lot looks great. The facade of the building is much improved. It is very much a revitalization project. It is a project that is related to an area that has an underserved demands, and I think those are all things that we can hang our hats on when and if this does come up again. The amount of investment that's required to trigger qualifying for this under the ordinance is fairly significant, and not everybody who paints the front of their building or does something is going to qualify for it. We chose a number that would make a meaningful difference in the community. So I think we have a project that meets the goals of that ordinance that we all passed, voted 6-1 for, except for Alderman Beatty, who clearly has a position there that he's going to stand firm with, and I applaud him for that.
Is you talking about Triangle Mart?
No, I'm talking about the ordinance that we passed. The ordinance that we passed. So that being said, the resolution also has a provision in it that says if any of the properties, if any of the spaces in that building becomes vacant, the tax abatement is suspended. And it is suspended, if it becomes vacant for a period of 12 months, the tax abatement is suspended, and that it will need to be reapplied for before it's granted, but it will in no case extend the 10-year window that we're talking about. So we've done what we can to protect the city in case these businesses don't stay with us.
So just for clarity, I support an abatement, but I don't support the full abatement.
Sure, got that. I'm saying that it's a de minimis amount in terms of the city budget.
It's a principle moving forward and a precedent that I don't want to set.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Sure.
so depending on how the votes go, I do not want to be the headline of every paper around here that we refused to help, but if your resolution is not going to pass, is there a common ground where we can have a plan B to where everybody wins?
I think you take a vote first on the resolution, and then it passes or not, and we go from there.
Okay.
And yes, you can certainly, the board can, as a part of that same dialogue with that on the agenda, there can be a proposal that says something different.
Okay.
We can work with it.
So it's not an all or nothing.
You would just rework the
Yeah.
resolution. The resolution is something that meets the requirements of our ordinance and Mississippi statute. You should just back it up. You
So
put that in writing.
At Tuesday's meeting, if we decide to vote on to approve something, can we strike the language that says the specifics of that?
I would like the resolution to be voted on as it stands, and if it does not pass, and I don't know if it will or not, but if it does not pass, then you start striking.
That's,
Fair enough.
that is a reasonable
Fair.
Starting,
That's fair.
starting point.
Y'all really, I'll tell you about the thing, about the 6-1 vote on the thing, on this.
Let's don't revisit.
I'm just saying, but
Let's-
Mayor, this has come up.
And this is where we are, I understand, but we've already talked about this at some length.
It's not too much to talk about something where we
It is if
proceed.
we're rehashing it constantly.
Well, it's something that, when we started this road on these tax abatements for the downtown that expanded, we didn't have, when the board passed it, we had no framework. We didn't know, other than of that $500,000 threshold, if the business passed it, we didn't know, beyond that, we had no framework. We just gonna pass it and then make the rules, I guess, as we go.
No framework for what?
For this downtown corridor.
That's what the ordinance was about.
But then when the orders were passed, we didn't have any specifics on size, who, there was no specific, it was almost an open-ended type thing. And that's one of the things that I was disapproved of, was just the fact that it had no framework and no consistency when you move with, okay, this business gets this amount, we'll treat these people different, get a different amount, that kind of thing.
Well, each
There's no
business is different, and that's just why you take it on a case-by-case basis. But either way, we've gone through that, we have an ordinance that we're dealing with. This fits within the ordinance, and the board can either support it or not as they choose, and we can modify it if we need to with some suggestions at the table on Tuesday night. Or we cannot pass it.
Did you have a suggestion?
I mean, we'll just wait for the resolution that she has drafted to either pass or not. I just don't want it to, if it's,
To die on the
I
vine.
don't want it to die. I want to find some type of agreement that it's a
And-
win-win, and we're not refusing to help.
It may
So-
pass. We don't
And-
know.
But I'm just saying, a plan B. I
Yeah.
just know that it's been a lot of pushback from people in the community, and I don't know how other people will vote for it, so.
Okay, all right, we will leave that one and move to the, obviously not on consent. Move to cemetery mowing, which I believe can be consented.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you, all right.
For the record, I'm for cemetery.
Are you? Good, all right, well, in that case, we'll all rest easier at night now. Under airport, we've got lease agreement renewal between the city of Starkville and Kyle Knight using the agricultural land. Anything about that, Mr. Lincoln, that we need to know? Just from last year, same on consent for that one? And then bids for the AIP project, clearing, grubbing, seeding, and this is as it relates to the extension, is that correct? The extension of the runway?
It does.
Okay, all right,
Consent.
consent for that one, all right. Under engineering, we've got an as-needed professional services agreement with Civil Link. This is, Mr. Cody, would you mind giving just a little bit? This is just for us to be able to use it as we follow through with the engineering work or with the street work, so.
We hope to have, we're opening bids next week on the overlay project as well as the preservation items. You've heard about it. We would hope to have a recommendation of street listing at the end of March. And this professional services agreement is to get some assistance from Civil Link on some of those preservation techniques for that first year. We have a technical question or something of the sort, we can call them up and have them at hand if we need them, but it's as needed. There's no expectation of it, just questions here and there.
And we will not be putting that one on consent. The vice mayor has asked that it not be put on consent, so, no.
But while I've got Ms. Brent, we already have a contract with them for a set amount of money, up to or not exceeding. What's our contract amount with Civic Link LLC?
We put a bow on that contract, that was to create the plan, all the digital software, and then.
That's initial stuff, what you're
Yes,
saying?
sir, yes, sir, and we have exercised that to its full extent.
Okay.
Next one is consideration of the transportation alternatives. We received the grant that we requested. This is $780,000, and this is for the continuation phase of the Spring Street grant. So consent for that one. Okay. Finance administration, obviously claims docket not, but we have a mechanical services agreement for the HVAC equipment.
Opening quarterly and change out all the filters.
Okay, all right. Is this the same as last year?
It's $100 more.
$100 more? I believe we can manage that. Consent for that one. Additional vehicle ending, what is this? Addition unmarked cars. Okay, so consent for that one?
Consent.
Yeah, thank you. All right, under HR, we have authorization to extend Ms. Dutcher as a temporary full-time deputy court clerk. Anything about that, Mr.
She
Ashford?
was part-time. The board approved for her to be temporary full-time for 6 months. We're still short a position in court.
Okay.
So we're asking to extend her out until July.
Okay, all right.
Consent.
Consent for that one. And then we have consideration of a discipline recommended by the sanitation director.
Consent.
Consent for that one.
Consent with his recommendation.
Sir?
Consent with his recommendation.
Yeah.
Consent.
Yes, sir. Okay. Under parks, purchasing youth baseball and softball uniforms. Got to do that.
Consent.
Consent for that one, okay. And 2 gas-powered golf carts for the lowest quote in the amount of $18,500.
Mayor, these new golf carts, are these replacing golf carts?
We don't have any golf carts. This is
And
the
this
first
is-
we've done golf carts. These are not, are these new, or are they used?
These
or
would be new golf carts for Cornerstone and special events. We are also securing sponsorship to offset some of these expenses.
Okay.
Does that have to be paid for out of our 2%? This
This would be 2%. This would be Cornerstone.
Special money, okay.
Consent.
All right.
It's a total of $18,500. It's like
Okay.
$18,500 each.
Amending the existing contract with Perry Weather to add 1 additional emergency speaker at Cornerstone, so
Consent.
consent for that one. All right, under police, we've got declaring a Crown Vic to be surplus and advertising, consent for that one.
Consent.
Approval of Corporal Colbert and CSI Cunningham to attend basic bloodstain pattern analysis course. That sounds fascinating.
Consent.
Okay,
Yes.
consent for that one. Code enforcement, this will be calling for public hearings on 205 Ware Street and then 204 Yates Street, both dilapidated structures.
Yeah,
So
I'm
this
working
is-
on 205.
Yeah, and this is just the calling for the hearing, so consent for that one.
Yes, ma'am.
And then under utilities, we have lowest quote for land management. This is the landscaping annual contract, right? Okay.
Consent.
Consent. Signing an aerator design contract for brush rotor design alternative proposal from Garver. Anything about that we need to know? Yes, ma'am.
The contract, the Garber contract, I did not have it yesterday when we prepared the paper packs, but I do have it now, and I can email it out to you, and it will be in the electronic.
Okay, all right. Anything we need to know about that, Mr. Kemp?
No, this is just moving that design ahead to try to get those replaced as soon as possible.
Okay.
Consent.
Oh, Mr. Strong, did I hear something?
I was just contemplating waiting to put it on consent Tuesday in case anybody wanted to look at the contract
Okay.
in the meantime.
All right.
But I'm okay with putting it on consent now.
All right. And then final is a
Who's gonna look at the contract?
grant, Burke. Final is a grant agreement modification for the infrastructure grant, aerator replacement project. Anything about that one you want to share, Mr. Kemp?
Maybe a good discussion, just very briefly. We initially started the downtown Main Street water and sewer project with the idea of using the ARPA funding to help offset that project. We went ahead and started the design, already got bids for that project, and then the state released the rules for usage of that ARPA funding. There was a procurement requirement in there that we did not follow. That was a little bit of a unique thing.
Very
So-
unique.
Yeah, very unique. And so it disqualified, since we had already started and already had gone into a contract of utilizing the ARPA funding for the downtown project. So what we're doing is pivoting and utilizing it for the wastewater aerator project. That's one of the reasons why we need to go ahead and start the design, is because there is an obligation deadline for that funding that has to be done, has to be obligated by the state by August the 16th of this year. So we really need to fast forward the design and get those out for bids. So that's a little bit more to the story.
Okay, thank you for that, appreciate it.
Consent.
All right, consent for that, and that carries us to the end of our agenda for Tuesday night. So we will have some further lively discussions on Tuesday night.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.